The World Council of Churches has a polygentic history. It emerged from the mission movement, faith and order movement, and also the life and work movement, which the Stockholm Conference of 1925 was a pivotal part of.
For our next address, we would like you to welcome on stage a church historian with a special interest in missiology. He has served the ecumenical movement for many years and in different positions. Since June of 2022, he is the General Secretary of the World Council of Churches. Please welcome on stage Reverend Dr. Jerry Pillay.
His Holiness, Holinesses, Eminence, Excellencies, sisters and brothers, it's a joy and a privilege to share with you on the theme of peace today. It is time for peace. That was essentially the message of the Universal Christian Conference on Life and Work held here in Stockholm in 1925. Indeed, a landmark in the history of the ecumenical movement in the 20th century. Not least because of the engagement and commitment of Archbishop Nathan Soderblom of the Church of Sweden. It was the first gathering of leaders of Anglican, Protestant, and Orthodox churches after the carnage of the First World War. Together, they spoke out for justice, peace, and reconciliation, and for a new ordering of society. The conference gave birth to the life and work movement in which churches sought to respond to social, political, and international challenges, and was one of the main ecumenical streams that led to the creation of the World Council of Churches in 1948. We are therefore not only remembering a historical event 100 years ago, but celebrating and commemorating a living legacy that continues to inspire the work of the World Council of Churches today. Archbishop Soderblom was elected Archbishop of Uppsala and thus the primate of the Church of Sweden in November 1914, 3 months after the outbreak of the First World War. When he became Archbishop, he set about using all his contacts to bring churches together to speak out against the carnage of war and in favor of peace and reconciliation. In 1917, he was given the mandate to take forward the preparations for an international conference with 2 other church leaders, one from the United States and one from Switzerland. But with his contact with the ecumenical patriarch at that time, he was able to also include the participation of the Orthodox Church. The Orthodox participation in the Stockholm Conference is significant, also because it is this special ecumenical year of 2025 we are marking not only 100th anniversary of the Stockholm Conference on the life and work, but also the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea. When participants gathered in Stockholm in 1925, they were aware of the anniversary that preceded them like we are today. Commemorating 2025 as an ecumenical year is thus an opportunity to draw from the ecumenical movement's fundamental principles of ecclesiology and ethics, as found in the traditions of both Nicaea and the life and work. In 1930, in his acceptance speech in Oslo, after being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, the year before he died, Archbishop Soderblom emphasized the role of the Church in promoting international understanding and peace. He underlined, we must struggle to win peace. Struggle against schism, against the mad measures of fear, against the ruthlessness of mammon, against hatred and injustice. And looking forward to the second conference on life and work, which would take place in Oxford in 1937, he asked, Will the obligation of the church to peace then be investigated more profoundly and more generally? Will the desire for brotherhood be stronger? The more armaments of distrust and fear reduced? The supranational judicial system built on stronger foundations? Will the church be more united and so better equipped to fulfill its duty toward peace? This is the mandate that we seek to respond to today as the World Council of Churches, as we seek to foster unity, justice, and peace in the world. Indeed, a very troubled, suffering, and struggling world, riddled with violence, conflicts, wars, poverty, migration, economic disparities, and a climate catastrophe. 100 years later, we gather here today in Sweden with the prayer and the call for a time for peace. The Commission of Churches on International Affairs, established in 1946, very much on the foundation of the life and work movement, held a consultation earlier this year in Athens to mark the anniversary of the Stockholm Conference. They issued a message called Reclaiming the Spirit of the Life and Work for Ecumenical Renewal. In this message, the consultation also highlighted issues not recognized. In this message, the consultation recalled that the challenges facing the churches in 1925 are in many ways strikingly like those facing the churches and the ecumenical movement today, including persistent international tensions, the deterioration of relations between powerful states, an accelerating arms race, and escalating economic inequality. The message of the consultation also highlighted issues not recognized or adequately addressed in Stockholm in 1925, especially the systemic violations of colonialism and racism, which continue to infect our relations today, including within and among the churches, as well as the global phenomenon of population displacement, refugees, and migrants. The CCI consultation went on to add challenges posed by technological developments not yet dreamed of in 1925. These include nuclear weapons, cyber warfare, social media, artificial intelligence, and not least, the global climate crisis that represents an existential challenge of a kind not faced by any previous generation and with profound implications for all future generations of life on Earth. Reflecting on the historical and theological connections between Nicaea and Stockholm, the CCIA consultation observed that from the basis of the Nicene Creed, Stockholm urged the practical application of the Christian faith to the burning issues of the day. Indeed, the Stockholm Conference was consciously envisaged as a Nicaea for ethics, for practical Christianity. A major positive difference between 1925 and now is the extensive instruments of international law that now exist to guard against the worst abuses of state power and to protect the vulnerable and the environment. Indeed, it is to the establishment of international law that the ecumenical movement committed itself in the years following the Second World War, starting by contributing to the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was the basis. However, respect for international law, commitment to international cooperation, and trust between nations and communities now face a major crisis driven by populist nationalism, political polarization, military confrontation, and mis- and disinformation. The increasingly blatant violations of the most fundamental principles of the international law that are being perpetrated today in Gaza, for example, in Ukraine, in Sudan, and elsewhere, and in the ongoing destruction of the environment, are indeed a threat to the whole idea of a common standard of legal and moral accountability. all states, the ecumenical movement, and all people of goodwill must rise to defend the principles and processes in which we have invested our aspirations for justice, human rights, peace, and the integrity of God's unique creation on this earth, to avoid returning to rule-less international disorder. I cannot fail to observe, sadly, that in this time of proliferating conflict and rising nationalistic confrontation, the heritage of the life and work movement is threatened even within the ecumenical movement. As the CCIA consultation stated, and has been especially observed since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, there is a need for renewed and sustained dialogue within the ecumenical movement about the Christian calling in context of conflict, international tensions, and military invasions. When there is a normalization of war, violence, starvation, and senseless killings, then society is out of step with God's plan and will for the world. In fact, society has become sick and toxic. People of faith need to rise and to say, enough is enough. That is why the World Council of Churches took a strong stand on these issues at its Central Committee in June this year. In the statements adopted on the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, the heritage of the ecumenical life and work movement, and the current multilateral cooperation crisis, the Central Committee sounded out the alarm. It stressed the emergency of this moment and called all people of goodwill to the defense of the principles that undergird our collective peace and security, our shared responsibility for protecting the living planet, and our common vision for justice, dignity, and equal rights for all. It observed that in a context of renewed and escalating divisions and confrontations, international laws and mechanisms can serve as important guardrails and protection against aggression, oppression, and abuses of the powerful. The WCC further asserted that in such situations, we must strive to honor the principles of international law without discrimination. The WCC has always aligned itself with those principles, and we cannot allow controversies based on history and perspective to undermine that fundamental commitment to justice and accountability. And so the Central Committee's acknowledgement of the apartheid in Israel and Palestine is a consequence of relevant determinations under international law, not merely as a matter of historical analogy with the experience of my own country in South Africa. Likewise, with regard to the question of genocide in relation to Israel's actions in Gaza, while denouncing the attacks and hostage-taking perpetrated by Hamas on October 7, 2023, as crimes against humanity and gross violation of morality, WCC calls for an immediate end to the Israeli attacks on Gaza and to the imposed famine, which existentially threaten both the people of Gaza and the remaining hostages. We urge Israel and all states to respect the principles of international law and the rulings of the International Court of Justice and other relevant tribunals of international law. 100 years after the Stockholm Conference, the witness of the ecumenical movement for unity amid division is once again an urgent calling to a world that is on an accelerating trajectory of fragmentation, confrontation, and conflict, and away from justice, solidarity, and peace. In the spirit of the Stockholm Conference, let me conclude with the words from the CCIA and the Work Centenary Consultation. Inspired by the Stockholm Conference, we proclaim again the central importance of encounter, relationship and dialogue, focusing on an ecumenical movement on what unites us, especially in our Christian faith, and embodying the multilateralism and commitment to dialogue, cooperation, and solidarity that we seek to restore in the wider world. End of quotation. Friends, Christian unity and interfaith collaboration is crucial for us to exemplify God's justice in the world. We need to stop and we need to ask, what are we protecting? Whom are we protecting? Most significantly, as Christians and as leaders of faith, we need to ask, whose voice are we listening to? Is it the voice of the God of justice, peace, righteousness, and love? Let us boldly, strongly, and prophetically pray, long, and work for peace in this broken and suffering world, knowing that the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ, reminds us, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. I thank you.